Greetings, nerds. This is Scene and Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. Hope you're doing well. Happy November.
I know. I
Yeah,
This year has been strange. I was thinking about this
yeah,
earlier today. Like, I know so much has happened that I understand how many feel like it's been a long year.
hmm
But for me, it's been a very quick year because I feel like so much has transpired
yeah.
that I view it as, well, there was 2025 and then July hit and next thing I know I'm in November.
Yeah. I was thinking that too today. I was just like, I think it was, yeah, as I was posting some stuff as far as like our plans for this month, which is to cover Severance and just really like thinking about like it's November
Mhm.
and you're right, and it really has like flown by the second half of the year. It just
Yeah.
seems like it was like crawling up to June, and then boom, it's like, oh, okay, all right, we're here at Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I feel like there was a lot of anticipation of things, so that
Yeah.
kind of helped move this year along because
hmm
as soon as Superman hit
Yeah.
theaters, it was just like, and then Fantastic Four, and then we took a
hmm
break for family stuff, and then and then the next thing and the next thing. It's just there was a lot. Not to say there wasn't a lot of content at the first half of the year. I just
Yeah.
feel like there's really a divide. It was like a slow start, but it's
hmm
finishing at a rapid pace.
For sure.
All right, so that brings us into Severance season 2, episode 3. Who is alive? Four employees of a mysterious company, Mark, Helly, Irving, and Dylan, are trying to uncover the truth about the workplace and secrets that surround them. You know, I need to stop reading IMDb summaries because, well, maybe not stop, but
Yeah.
here's my thing, Will.
Okay.
Since we just got finished covering Gen V,
hmm
those are brilliant IMDb
Yeah.
summaries. And then I get like that could honestly summarize this entire show.
Yeah, for real.
I mean, where are the goats? Where
Yeah,
are
where are
the
the yeah, where are the goats? Where are the yeah, for real. Oh
where
man,
are
yeah.
the weird paintings? I mean,
Where are the
there's
paintings?
so
Where are the
many things they could have
yeah.
grabbed on from this episode to put in there to spice it up, but
Yeah,
geez,
where are the the four tempers with malice and the rams with the goats. Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah,
it's so weird.
yeah,
But before we get to the goats, because we will, unlike the summary, we will get to the goats.
yeah.
Uh, I want to start with Dylan
Okay.
because he really dominated this episode for me.
hmm
Um, mainly because of a lot of what we were talking about last week with him,
Yeah.
and I like how he's clearly on his own story, more so than any of the other three. And I don't find it distracting. You
No.
know, it adds more to it flesh out so much perspective
hmm
on being a severed employee and not. And last week from watching the second episode in particular and seeing him and his struggle to hold a job or to find a job after being fired from Lumon,
Yeah.
then to go into the innie world and to see that that carrot of family visitation is
Yeah.
motivating him to like not plot but really like stick to the thing because he can get a reward. And then we see the reward. And shout out to the casting because Merritt Weaver, I was just like, yes, I miss this woman. I'm
Yes.
so glad she's on the screen. And I'm so glad this pairing. And it just, the overall arc between this visitation that I did not expect to happen so soon,
Yep.
but then to have it leave with a kiss on the cheek,
hmm
and then to parallel that with the Audi world and the white lie she told about the habit of kissing Dylan on the cheek, but the Dylan on the couch did not get no cheek kiss or
Nope. Nope.
no, not, yeah, I mean, I think he got a peck, but
Yeah.
I sorry, I said that wrong. The thing that was different was the I love you.
Yes, that's what I was just thinking. I was about
Yeah,
to bring that up. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because that
yeah.
was, yeah. I mean, we have, to your point with the pairings and this Dylan's story, and I will say, whenever I had to like watch the I had to watch the family visitation scene a couple times because just to roll it back just a little bit, thinking about, when we were discussing the IMDb summary, these shows, I mean, there's so much packed in an hour, and I had and so with any Dylan and the story with Gretchen and the I love you, and
Mhm,
it just like I was starting to like thinking about the relationships in this show as
mhm,
far as you know Mark
mhm,
S and Helly,
mm,
you had
mm.
Irv and Bert, and now Dylan has Gretchen, and just how when you juxtapose any Dylan with Audi Dylan, and and this just the whole just any Audi Dylan just sort of seems like a guy who like and as they were talking about, like he can't hold down a job. He just seems to just be just a lump on literally a lump on the couch kind of
Well,
individual. And as far as what we've seen of him, but also going back to with the difficulty that he's had as far as his holding a job, whereas the Annie Dillon seems to be more curious. I don't know. I don't know if curious is the right word, but he just seems to be more alive
right.
than his outer persona.
Right. And I think what the details Gretchen is
Mm-hmm.
able to sum up in the 18 minutes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
18 and what, however many seconds, they give us some clues about that, because she talks about how he has trouble keeping other jobs,
Mm-hmm.
but and then Dylan starts to question, like, well, what's wrong with him?
Yeah.
And she's very adamant, nothing, but he hasn't found his thing. And
Right.
that is heartbreaking,
Mm-hmm.
because I see, and that's where I kind of like wanted to chime in when you said he was a lump on the couch. I was like, no, he is just, because he's not at work. So he's on the couch, he's hanging out with his kids. His wife is suddenly leaving, like to go to her job. So there's
Mm-hmm.
ships in the night.
Yeah.
So that's what gives us some context for how their relationship is a bit strained given their like need for income.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's leaving like 1 minute of togetherness.
Yeah.
So, and then Dylan, who we have seen as an innie for
Mm-hmm.
so long, you see he does belong on the severed floor. Like,
He does.
and I think we've talked about this before, with this idea that the show does really good in terms of that sense of, if you are your job,
Mm-hmm.
you have that identity as
Yeah.
like, for 8 hours, 9 hours a day, I am in this place and I have this identity, which is not, I'm not saying it's completely different, but there are slight differences between your behavior at work versus your behavior at home. And so to me, I feel like in that conversation, Gretchen clearly said he just hasn't like found where he belongs, which is heartbreaking, because Dylan feels like he belongs there.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's at his job. And so then you start to think about it. Okay, well, how fucked up is it that a person who in the outside world is just trying to find a place where he can belong to support his family. And the reality is, he has found that, but because he's found that as a severed person, like he will never know that fulfillment that any Dylan has.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, oh, it's so good.
It really is. It's just so yeah. I mean, and I don't want to jump ahead to the fourth episode, but I think but I think going backwards to the second episode, and just also just like you were saying, Dylan does belong on that severed floor,
Mhm.
and and just thinking like in the second episode where he's at the job interview and talk, and we see like so maybe I was being a bit harsh on
Mhm.
calling Audi Dylan a lump on the couch because he is trying to find that purpose
Mhm.
and and for a moment through through that very hard job interview that he was in well, hard in the sense that it was just like, it's just the tortured conversations that we have with job interviews sometimes. I think he was bonding with the guy until it
Yes.
hit that he was on, that he works for Lumen and he's a severed Lumen employee, and everything from that point forward, like the tenor of the interview changed. And
Mhm.
so so I think that gave us a glimpse into what Gretchen was talking about when any Dylan was asking, well, is he a dick? Is he, what's wrong with him? That job inter that that job interview really contextualizes what we see in the third episode for like why, to your point, as far as their relationship, Audi Dylan's you know lack of not being able to find his thing, whereas any Dylan has found his thing you know, because of all the issues of how many people in the Audi world sees this severed
Yeah.
employment. He's probably had that. He's probably as defeated at this point because every time he's probably gets to like to the 90% through the interview, and then they bring that up, and then I'm sorry, we'll
Well,
take your thing under advisement.
yeah, I mean, I think you raise an excellent point in terms of the irony that, and what she did not say is that technically speaking, based on that scene you were just talking about, the thing that is wrong with him is that he's a severed employee,
Hmm.
which that now I wonder how that conversation would have gone if she had said that,
Right.
and like what any Dylan, how any Dylan would have reacted to that.
Hmm.
But I also think like it's not like now that he's back with Lumen, he's not job hunting.
Right.
But there is still a depressed nature about him because he does not, once they walk out of the office, they don't know what life is as an innie. Just
Hmm.
like what they don't, like the innies don't know like what life is as an outie. So, and that's where you would think with a show like this that has been on now for 2 seasons,
Hmm.
people would get tired, but I feel like the pace that they are like unraveling this onion
Hmm.
makes that whole scenario much more fascinating and like a stable place rather than, oh, well, this is getting a bit tiresome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I
um
think, yeah, I heard a conversation where they were talking about the showrunners and the creator was, making a point as far as like season one was sort of like, it was, young child, and now, season two is like we're going into adolescence as far as like a growth pattern of the show. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the pacing because this third episode, and I know we'll get to it. There were some things that for other series probably would have been the penultimate or the finale, as far as some of the things that happened in this episode. Uh,
mhm.
but but you're right. I mean, but the pacing here is just like, oh yeah, we're gonna wrap some things up. We're gonna start for me. I will say episode three at first kind of, especially with the scene with Dylan and Gretchen. I said I had to watch it had to stop it and go back a couple times. Part of it was I felt like the pacing was a bit slow to me for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But then next thing, but at the same time, for what they were doing, it was the right pace. So I wasn't like,
I have
I
no
was.
idea what you mean by that.
What I mean by that is just basically, I didn't feel
Which,
it was like I didn't feel like it was rushed.
right, right,
And
right,
unlike some other things that may have happened in this episode,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't think that Severance knows how to rush, but I do think that because I had the slow issue with the fourth episode, but
mm,
we'll get there.
yeah,
Irving in this episode, he ends up trying to find the hallway.
hmm
And but he's looking for the hallway, but he's also trying to help Mark find Miss Casey. And so he has to go to his what is Bert's department? O&D?
OND, yeah,
O&D,
yeah,
which and then we meet Felicia, and
hmm
it's a nice moment between them. But oh, the breadcrumb that she drops about what is we now known as the exports hall.
yeah, yes,
And O&D used to send a lot of shipments there, and they used to go themselves, but now they just a guy gets sent to pick up the shipments and go down there. So, emphasis on the word exports. Very
yeah,
interesting. um but and and yeah, that's really what Irving is about. There are signs in this episode that he does not trust Helly. Granted, we've known that since episode 2.
yeah,
Or no, or was it episode 2 or episode no, it was the first episode when the innies are reunited and they go around sharing, and that's when Helly or Helena chooses to say night gardener.
yeah.
Wrong move. Wrong move.
Wrong move. Yep.
Wrong move. That was the start. And then it just continues where she can never quite do or say the right thing, in particular with Irving, where
Mm,
it's like, that's not what Helly would have done there, but okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and we also, speaking about art and all of that, Seth gets a gift from the board. Will, what did you think about how the board wanted to make him feel appreciated?
Oh God, I'm so glad you brought that up because just like Seth, as he was looking at that, I had the same reaction where I was just like, what the fuck? I mean, it was, I mean, there's so many levels of with that scene. I mean, one when they had like the with Kier basically like blackface and Kier.
Oh my god.
I, I mean, it really was. I mean, and Irving, and when Seth was looking at it, and he was just like, "Thanks," but it really brought on so many things as far as just like, just like the corporate. I think about like over the last few years, and with how corporations shift in moods with political winds and stuff, and how like a few years ago everything was like, oh, we're so woke, we're so fitting in, we're Black Lives Matter, we're this, we're that, and all that. And now, now that the winds have shifted a bit, now they're like, oh, no, 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 we're going to kiss the ring, and we're going to like, pay money to CBS to, settle lawsuits and all those kind of things. So I felt like that was what was going on here with Lumen, where they're like, we're trying to fit in, and we're trying to make you feel part of the company, and you know, and and trying to relate. And it was just like the racism and the just bad taste was just seeping from that scene. And even like when Natalie was like talking to was was there and like talking with um Seth, and I mean, I'm, just got to pull up the image. I mean, it's just like, yeah, it's just they both had that shared look of like uncomfort whenever she disconnects from the board. And even though she, it was one of to me when I was watching that scene, they both had that look of understanding as far as like this is just so wrong. But but at the end of the day, you don't want to lose. Sometimes just gotta like swallow your tongue and just like, okay, I just got to do my job. And but at least at the end of the episode, we saw Seth like basically take these portraits and put them back in the box and put them away in the closet there, the storage room there, and where they belong. And but I do think that all of that is going to like have a role in what may come down the line as far as like if Seth ever has to like pick a side or something with the company or just understanding what his whole role in this whole process is.
So I think a scene like the reaction to the painting and then also the putting away of the painting um, just is the example of many throughout this season that we'll find of why Traumel Tillman got an Emmy for
Hmm.
this season.
Yeah.
And it's because everything you just said, like there's that, but I also feel like the way he plays Milchick is very similar to the way the actress who plays Natalie um that performance. There's a hint of artificial intelligence, like a
Hmm. Hmm.
roboticness about it, where it's so interesting because we see that there is like Milchek is not divided between innie and outie,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because we've seen him react the same exact way as an outie.
Hmm.
So there is no, which, and then it just makes you wonder like, well what is it? Why is it that there's the there's a, albeit a manufacturedness about
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
that just makes you question, and we don't know anything about them. Where I also feel like on top of all of the racism you were just talking about, there was also just like there was something else.
Hmm.
There was something else of that was shared between them of like this is this is where we come from,
Yeah.
and this is the like it's so interesting, um the levels, and yeah, and then we also see Natalie
Hmm.
very much like Milchick out in the outer world snuggling up to Rickon
Yep.
and talking about how they want to bring his work into the any world, into the severed floor, and rewrite the book, but from an any perspective.
Yeah.
And because there are certain words that innies respond to, and it's
Hmm.
just, and I think we need that book
Yeah.
for just our own outie understanding of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because I really just want to understand what words in particular is she talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um because that would be very interesting, but then again that also I think would give us clues as to what's really going on at Lumen and what their overall goal is. And while they're doing that, we also get Devon, who leads us into Mark's overall storyline, which
Hmm.
which we get two. We get
Yeah.
both get an outie and an innie mark,
Hmm.
because
Yep.
the innie one I could care less about. I'm just gonna be honest. The
Huh.
goats were fine, but and I kind of wanted this. I kind of asked her, and I know this is my own problem. But I didn't it didn't take me out, but it didn't suck me in,
Mm.
if that makes sense. It was
Hmm.
kind
Hmm.
of just there. And I
Yeah.
kind of was just like, can we have more? Can we get some more information from Felicia? Or can we get some more information? I, I, for whatever reason, and maybe it's probably because there were a lot of metaphors and
Yeah.
all of these other stuff going on in those scenes. But you like them?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it was, for, I guess speaking of any Mark, I mean, there were like two stories going on because at first, it kicks off as as we talked about earlier with Dylan, uh, and Irving. They were in the office there. They had the missing thing looking for Miss for Gemma, or Miss Casey, as she's known in the any world. And so, so it definitely led to them, running into I can't remember Gwendolyn Christie's character's name, but she was just I guess they were like the, what was it, the MN, the oh gosh, what were they? The multi, they were
No.
like basically the Manimals Nurturable.
Yeah.
Yeah, floor. And so it was, so we see, so we've seen the goats from the first season. Now they have their whole wing, and of course, Mark and Helly are having to go down a shaft and and you know figure this whole thing out. So so I think it was just a good connection. I think it was just basically deepening what's the purpose of these goats in the Lumen world. I mean, are they, is it for cloning experiments? I mean, given all the ritual, all the religious iconography and stuff with Kier. I mean, is it a sacrifice thing that they're breeding these goats for? I mean, it's any, so
I I can see that and I understand that.
yeah.
Um, but I also kind of separate the two. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is, um, and I'm just going to give a shout out that I have been listening to the Ringer TV talk about each episode,
mm,
and they brought up a fabulous point, and I forgot about this, and I was sort of kicking myself because I've read the book and I've seen the movie. Never Let Me Go.
mm.
Are you familiar with this?
I have not.
Okay, it stars Carey Mulligan and Andrew Garfield, and
Okay.
the book is better than the movie. The movie
Okay.
is so so, but the essential thing is these characters who we meet in the book,
Mm,
we learn are have been created for these people who may need a kidney,
mm,
who may need an organ transplant.
mm,
And so you're following a love story, and you realize that these lives are not technically theirs, like in
mm,
a way
mm,
where eventually when their person needs something like a transplant, like they're going to get taken away and they're just used for parts.
mm,
And they brought this up, and it stuck with me because of um, the goat scene and
mm,
all of the language around husbandry and cattle, and especially the last, what allows Mark to get what he wants in this exchange is essentially by just comparing Miss Casey to a goat.
mm,
Like, well, you care about your goats just like I care about Miss Casey. Like,
mm,
so what are you saying here? And then they also reminded me. in a previous episode recap that the first thing that Helly says when she enters the severed floor, and I think the first episode, is she asks the question, "Am I cattle?"
Yeah, I do remember that.
So we get that in the first episode. We get the sheeps in the finale, and now we're getting sheep again. And we're also dealing with super blending of innie and outies because we also know that the Helly in the scene is also Helena. It's not
Right,
Helly.
right.
So I think when I look at the scene and think about the the continued themes of twins, which
Hmm.
we'll get there,
Yeah.
and harvesting of organs or people that are created to extend the lives of other people.
Hmm.
I enjoy it, but
Yeah.
the way it played out on
Yeah.
screen, like what I'm getting at, and this will summarize my point. I
Yeah.
appreciate the subtext more than I actually appreciate the scene itself.
Yeah. I get that. I get that. I mean, and I guess I was saying earlier about the pacing.
Mhm.
This is where I struggled with this scene as well.
Mhm.
I did. I did until um, and I think the thing that got me whenever the guy was asking like, "Can we see your bellies?" and and the
Ugh.
whole yeah, that as well about the pouches and that kind of stuff. But those were the moments that I was like, okay, all right, I got pulled me back in, but overall, I like you. I think this was the Audi Mark stuff definitely had my interest more than what was going on here with the goat floor. Even though I know this is probably very, very significant, I will stipulate to that, but it just didn't, like you said, I think the um, it, execution in an already dense episode just didn't pop for me, unlike some of the other things.
Yeah, I do think that with Mark, what is clever and different about this episode is for once the Audi version of him and the innie version are technically doing the same thing.
Yes.
They are both looking for this woman
Hmm.
that they now they call her different things, but it's the same person.
Yeah.
And so I think that that is a great way to start the episode with that. Okay, we now have these two characters who are on the same page and heading to the same point. So their purpose is suddenly the same, which makes the ending and the choice to reintegrate that Mark makes that much more powerful
Yeah.
because now they are supposedly they well sorry, I shouldn't say supposedly, now from what we understand based off of that final scene
Hmm.
is reintegration
Yeah.
occurs.
Hmm.
And so what were your thoughts about the choice of having him reintegrate?
So up until this moment, and earlier, even I touched on this earlier as we were in our discussion. I felt that this moment of the reintegration was rushed. But
Mhm.
now that you like sort of contextualized it for me, where both Innie and Outie Mark are looking for the same thing, I don't. It makes sense now why they did it when they did it
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
sync up what's going on in both worlds.
Right.
So
Because
yeah.
it's also we don't realize it until very later in the episode, but for once, it's not any Mark trying to get a message outside. It
Hmm.
is Audi Mark trying
Yeah.
to get a message inside.
Inside. Yeah.
Wh- because suddenly he suspects, and then what really solidifies his choice at the end is he's told his wife is still alive there.
Mm-hmm.
And once he's told, he's like, fuck it. I don't
Yeah,
care if I die tomorrow. I want to go see her. I need to understand.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that it totally does make sense, and he's willing to take the risk, even though her last subject PD just like ended up dropping dead there in the parking lot. Um, but yeah, it makes sense now why. But it's funny how whenever uh whenever he was there with they were making the box and the lighting and stuff, and I think it was getting a little glimpse into like I was pondering like how does things happen between the normal world and the separate floor as far as and so when Ragabi like says, look, whenever he was with the UV, like don't sear out your eyes trying to like because of the I guess the clue was to dilate the pupils, because I noticed because when the episode starts, he like uses his stopwatch to like time stuff as far as getting into the facility and stuff. So so it's cool how they brought all those things together, but she was like, I perfected the procedure, and we do it was really cool whenever they were seeing the reintegration happen, where they were like cutting between both worlds, and the colors and all that kind of stuff too, as far as like outie mark wearing the red versus the any marks with the blue, and I just thought it was really really effective. So um and
So,
yeah.
um, what I found very interesting and oddly worked, which I don't think many shows can pull this off, but to have end an episode like that, and for me,
Hmm.
I watched these back to back.
Hmm.
So to end an episode like that, and then to start episode 4, Woe's Hallow,
Hmm.
with Irving, any Irving, definitely not Addie, in the middle of an iced frozen lake.
Yep. Yeah.
Like a scene from a portrait. That this episode was beautifully shot. Woe's Hallow was.
Yeah.
It's interesting how I didn't immediately think to myself, wait, like like reintegration, because I was just like, no, that's any mark.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it doesn't, and the episode of what was Hallow, because they set up this team retreat in the
Yeah.
outset, which is another thing that Lumen promised them in the first episode for them to
Mhm.
return. It was another carrot.
Yep.
Like, I didn't really even think about the fact that, like, well, what did, like has Mark reintegrated? I was just like fully on board with trying to understand what Woe's Hollow was, like the innies. That
Yeah.
was like it wasn't distracting is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And I like how even by the end of the episode, there's some flickers that
Hmm.
you see where you're like, oh, that's gonna come. But I was also like, okay, yeah, you save that till the next episode because we'll get there.
Yeah.
Because you're now changing some other things up. But what were your thoughts about this setup and start of Woe's Hollow?
Yeah, so the whole setup as far as Woe's Hollow, it was this episode for me was really just like I think your first point, just to pick up on what you said. Love the way they started with Irving, and and on the ice, and getting this perspective of is the any, and but also just I think just how it just visually how it looked, because I think I realized how claustrophobic being in Lumen, the factory, had become watching the show. Um, and also even the town itself is just like, it's dark, the hues and stuff. So for them to be outside and just to be in this expansive place, whether it's, you know, um, the Ingan, National Forest, that's what we, as we learn what it is later. it was just it was a cool change of pace. I mean, also even this little small things like, instead of cutting to the normal opening credits, they just had, Severance there on the screen in the sky, and just different color grading, and also just like all the innies wearing black, and uh, Seth and Miss Wong use it wearing white, and just it just really just it did so many things about it, just like really just did a great job of framing the atmospherics around the episode, so that when the characters were dealing with their various issues within the episode, it just made the episodes pop and go so much deeper for me. With the change of scenery, and then of course all the reveals that we get in this episode.
It felt like they were in a VR game.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah.
Very much, where I like how Dylan's like, "Oh, I knew there was sky and
Sky.
this." I'm like, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, "That looks painted. That looks
Yeah.
like you like I can appreciate how you started, and you're like and you started to explain how the difference between that such a wide open space, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Which honestly, this reminds me of where I'm from. So I wasn't that really I was like, this is another day in life. Um, and but to me, for such a large space,
Hmm.
it felt very confining.
Oh yeah.
And it felt very much like there was still an untold barrier,
Hmm.
or a constraint, if you will, of where, yeah, we're going to let you out here, but this is your box.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you you're in a box, but like, we will also warn you from straying away from Kier's path and all of that. This is the Irving episode that
Hmm.
I brought up
Yep.
last week. I will say, and I'm like I said, I was like, I have no idea. It's just like little bits and pieces that I've heard. I'm pretty sure something big's gonna happen to Irving, and boy does it. But I also was not expecting it to go the way it does,
Hmm.
with him and his, albeit, annoyance with Helena being
Hmm.
a imposter, and his spiral into this paranoia that ultimately makes him attempt to kill her. Like, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Which, but it's a sacrifice. Like, it's this interesting thing where and he knew it.
Yeah.
I feel like looking at both days, you can see him walking this path and knowing, like, if I push this, it's gonna impact me. Like, it's gonna be an exchange, and essentially it was like, to like bring Helly back, flip the
Yeah.
switch. Like, we don't want this Audi. We don't know this Audi. Like, get her out. And Seth does. Seth succumbs to it because, or Helena would have drowned to death. And in return, Irving gets fired in the worst way possible. Like, it will be as if you, Irving B., never existed or drew a single breath on the earth. May Kier's mercy follow you into the eternal dark.
Yeah.
Which,
Whew.
oh my God,
Yeah.
like, I it's another solid ending, because does it make me want to, like, okay, like, I feel as though these episodes with Severance, they do a very good job with satisfying you,
Yeah. They do.
where you are curious, but
Hmm.
you're not overly curious. Like, I'm not jumping to like, let's go hit the next episode. No, I'm
No.
like, I'm taking my time. It took me
Yeah.
9 months since the show came out to watch it. I'm no rush. But at the same time, it's also just like, okay, all right. Because yes, we don't know what this means for Irving as a character in this show, but at the same time, that idea of but there it's okay, I'm gonna summarize this and let you talk and ramble and rant about it. But just the idea that now we're introduced with the idea of what does it mean for an outie or an innie to die?
Hmm.
Which death, which is ironic because in with this whole scene and Seth's ending sentiment to Irving, it's essentially you are no longer employed here, therefore you are dead.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that there's just there's a lot to unpack whenever that happened to Irving, and because yeah, to be fired by this company means literally is yeah. I mean that he Irving B Irv B no longer exists, and I mean I'm stating the obvious, but it's like get into that duality as far as the levels we talked about earlier this evening. If because we see the evolution of this character from season one to now, and he went from being the company man. He was content. Irv B, the innie, was content with working in his job. It was his whole existence, and then he meets Bert, and everything is like everything changes. Like what happens a lot of times in life. An event happens, and whether you fall in love or any number of things, your perspective on things change. And so, and now that we have this with Irv, and now that he, and and also like his relationship with Dylan, and his relationship with the true Helly, are who the any Helly, not Helena. All those relationships and stuff that he has and bonds that he's built up over time has now is now ended. And now we've and then how the not only are we going to lose this character, but the innies will lose a member of their team that they have come to mark fault to have him come back. So now they're as we move forward, how's this story going? How's the story going to be told now? And how is it going to unfold as far as given that yeah, any Irvin's gone, but Audi Irv definitely has learned some things and knows has understand what's going on you know as far as there's no he haven't been reintegrated like Mark, but Audi Irv knows with the paintings and stuff there's some stuff the things going on that his any has been engaged in. So how does Irv Irving interact with the innies now to like given that given that he's he's not allowed on the property and stuff. So yeah, it's just a lot of levels to like where things go in these next 6 episodes.
Right, right. Well, it's also just like, what will Irving be outie reaction be to
Mm,
all of this? Because
yeah,
or what will he be told happened?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Because
so
because that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because yeah, we have seen at least the first time because of the actions of the overtime initiative,
mhm.
him being dismissed by Seth, and so now are we gonna so now yeah we're gonna see that again, and but but now the Audi Irving knows a lot, probably knows a little bit more than what he did that we saw a couple episodes back.
Yeah. Well, I think if we get anything from Irving for the rest of the season, it's gonna be about Bert and
Mhm.
still trying to find Bert in the outer world.
Yeah.
Because we are shown Bert a glimpse of him, so and he
Mhm.
he clearly knows something. Um, so we're told basically they during this adventure, if you would call it like this sleepaway camp excursion, they are following the guidebook and this ancient Kier text.
Mhm.
And we could sit here for like the next hour and probably go through all of the different lines, but
Yeah.
the biggest line and arguably the only line that I really um took away from the episode was the at the end of the creepy horror tale about the twin brothers,
Mm.
because apparently Kier had a twin,
Yep.
and Kier's twin died, and then he's told by what did they call the bride? What
Uh,
was
the bride's she that's the temper woe.
Yeah, he's told by the Temper Woe, um, that this is your doing. You suffered wantonness. Now he's no one's brother, only chaos's whore.
Mhm.
And the word wantonness was really stuck out to me because in what you were just talking about with Irving, and then what we were talking about with Dylan and Mark and Helly and Helena, there is a lot of want and desire for what the other, like Audi or any, has,
Mhm.
which is driving these characters. So I was like, oh, that's a great word to describe what's really happening here. is is your desire to have that thing that unknowingly, or well, now knowingly, because Mark does know that his wife is alive in this
Mhm.
on the severed floor, um is exactly what like they want. And so it kind of goes back to the previous episode where I was saying, if Gretchen had said to Dylan, well, the thing that's wrong with him is he can only get a job here because he's severed, and there's prejudice out there
Mhm.
against severed people.
Mhm.
W- then it's kind of like, well, as an innie, it's like, well, I'm just going to go back to my cubicle because I'm not wanted out there. I'm
Yeah.
wanted here. you
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
It's like it's suddenly like, oh, so the Audi world, the Audis, I don't belong there clearly because I'm getting my butt kicked out there. And yeah, I have a family, but apparently that's not enough. So I'm living my best life. So I think that's really a good summarization. And I like how it's just one line in a very dense episode, but at this rate, I'm going to say we can't use that term anymore when we're talking about Severance because every episode is
They're all
dense.
they're all dense. Yeah. Agreed.
But what was your takeaway from all of this twisted mythology that we learn about Kier during this group retreat?
Yeah, so I think it just, I think it really it really between a couple things. One, with all the innies meeting their doppelgangers, um, as throughout the episode, and then we learned that Kier had a brother, and it just, and it goes back to what I was sharing at the beginning, as far as just like the framing of this with the colors, like the black v white, the as far as with the innies wearing that, and um Milchick wearing the white, and and it really just the whole duality of the innie versus outie. It just sort of like, it just looks like kind of like the rule of two with with these folks, where that all of this Lumen mythology and was basically like set up, because from basically this fourth book was like hidden because of the shame that Kier had for his brother Dieter, because he was like jerking off and and spoiled his put his legacy out on in the woods there. It's like it's like he's disgusted by this, by his brother, and he's trying to like correct all these things. And it kind of also reminds me of like whenever he saw Helena earlier, when his as far as the legacy family members reaction to when when Dad saw Helena after the big after the overtime issue, where it's just there is a way of things, and the Cure way is the way to do it, whereas Dieter is like the impure, the improper way. And so so I felt there was that. I think some of the larger things that we were dealing with these characters too, with the innies versus the outies, is the whole body autonomy issues, especially like given what we learn, um, where our suspicions were confirmed about Helly and Helena, being that Helena was in basically we basically from the night of the overtime incident to this moment, we've been dealing with Helena, and how you know we saw her like taking an interest in I think you mentioned this like maybe last week when we were discussing her like looking at the videos of Mark and stuff, and her trying to fill that relationship void, and that that, she's interested in Mark, and also um interested in helping him in, for for both the innie and outie, as far as I think the innie for Helly are, I think Helena's like jealous that Helly Harini has this relationship with Mark, and so whenever she like whenever had when they had sex there in the tent, I mean, I think
Mhm.
she was just like taking advantage of the situation. So so it gets into the ethical questions as far as body autonomy here, and for all the innies and the outies, as far as who's really in control here. So there's
Well,
just yeah.
yeah, a few things about what you just said,
Yeah.
because one thing that I keep wanting to raise, and it's not really something I want to discuss, but more just like something I want to
Mhm.
throw out there,
Yeah.
that continues to go through my mind whenever we talk about Helena.
Hmm.
And it's this idea, does she know what happened to Miss Casey?
Mm.
Because that's the thing that's haunting me. Like
Hmm.
Helena, so far it's been very clear what her angle is in over these last 4 season 2. But that's the thing where I'm just like, is that something she doesn't know? Like, because she's now been an imposter for a little bit here, and she's given no sign that she really knows A, who Miss Casey is, and
Hmm.
B, also has made the connection that Miss Casey is Mark's wife in the
Hmm.
outer world who is dead.
Yeah.
So they, at least from what they've shown us, there's been no sign for me or context clue that she does know, which would make her even more villainous, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Hmm.
Um, so maybe that's why it's best to keep her not knowing, and then to explain why she doesn't know later on in the show.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the I don't know if it's the autonomy, like, yes, they had sex and whose body is this? I just think what they're doing is something that we've talked about since the first episode this season. It's the creating of not a triangle, but more like a pentagon,
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
like a six, because yes, we see the physicalness escalate between Mark S and Helly or Helena in this
Mhm.
instance, but we also saw in the previous episode an interaction between that felt very much like a first date between
Yeah.
Gretchen, who's the wife of Dylan,
Mhm.
but she's meeting the any Dylan for the first time. So it's like, whoa, who are you married to?
Mhm.
Where
Yeah.
what is the confines of adultery here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who and then on top of now, because we already talked about how Irving pushed it,
Mhm.
and we know at the end of this episode Heliar is back and Helena is gone. So, huh. But we also know that within like the next 10 minutes, Mark S is going to be switched again.
Yeah.
so so who knows what that means in terms of this very much, it's very clever
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
and this is coming from a shipper, to be able to take a a pair who have chemistry,
Mhm.
and it not to be tiresome and just be like, get together, because technically it's not a pair, it's two pairs. And now
Yeah.
we're seeing, and this season we're seeing all the different ways they can pair. And
Yeah.
I'm not talking about sex. I'm just talking about interaction wise.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we've now seen Helena interact with Mark S. Any Mark S. Wait
Mhm.
until we see Helena interact with Audi Mark S. We have yet to
Well,
see that.
but they did have now, but we did see that the reintegration did work because when they were in the tent, Audi Mark was there for like a moment.
A moment, but I don't think he was there when
Well,
Helly woke up.
no, well, he whatever, right? He wasn't. No, not yet.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
it was a flash, but
it was a flash. Yeah,
yeah, I don't think we fully have had, I don't think that counts towards Helena and Mark S interacting. And by Mark S, I mean Audi Mark S
mm, mm,
interacting with Helena. I think there was a flicker, and remember, it didn't instantly work either.
no, no,
But so I took it more as like, oh, okay, that'll be coming. But the very moment we get Heliar back, then suddenly the next day or so, or it
mm,
really, based on the timeline, should be within an hour, but
yeah, yeah,
5 minutes, it shouldn't take that long for Mark S to be reintegrated. But also, and this ties back to Irving,
mm,
technically we don't know what it means for an innie to be reintegrated.
right. We don't.
Like, what does that mean for the innie? Does that mean the same exact thing for the Audi, of where like, yeah, you go through the machine, but you're still the same, and also, does that, this is a better question.
Yeah,
Does that create a whole new character?
yeah, it does. Well, I mean, I guess it's a
Yeah.
blending. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
yeah, because it's the blend. Yeah, because yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think yeah,
It's like, well, yeah, technically it would, because then you're suddenly enforced. I don't
yeah.
know.
Yeah,
So
you are. Yeah, I mean, I get
confusing.
yeah, because we've integrated the two distinct personalities into a new, fully, yeah, full third person. Oh
Yeah.
man, the
It's
show.
just yeah. So again, it's a
My
pentagon.
head
They've
hurts.
managed to create pentagons, not love triangles. They've managed to create three-dimensional spheres of just love and affection and wantedness. And
Yeah.
boy, oh boy,
Yeah.
it's it um yeah, it's good that I feel like this show can allow me to not spiral theory,
No.
like theory spiral, but just throw out things and be like, huh, well, we'll see.
We'll
We'll
see.
see
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
get there eventually, but
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
moment you really start thinking about it, it's like that makes my head hurt. They'll if that happens, they'll let me know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they answer some things, yeah, they, we we know that there is there's that whole Glasgow protocol. So they built in they do have some fail safes built into the system as
Hmm.
far as like how to get the any back.
Yep.
Um, but then it like opens up other questions like, so is, to your point about this being a VR wall, I mean, is this another floor on is this the floor below the severed floor? Or are they really truly outdoors? Because I know we didn't talk about Cobell
Uh-huh.
as far as episode 3, but whenever she was driving to Salt Neck, and I was thinking, maybe is Salt Neck the place where they had taken the Audis to, like, you know to this big park, or is it, or is this place like the whole export floor, where they were talking, where Irving and Felicia were talking about. So I mean, there's just so many, like you say, you can just
Or
throw,
is it a whole different floor? Because we
yeah,
saw Goat World.
yeah, we
We
saw Goat
saw
World,
Goat
yeah.
World.
Yeah, we saw Goat World go from one goat now to a whole floor with these other people who aren't. I take it they're not severed. Um,
No, there's
working on
something
this.
else.
Yeah, there's something else working on this goat floor. So,
There's definitely something else.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
for sure. Who has
yeah,
pouches
but
apparently.
yeah,
But
but yeah, they have pouches or something. But I will say with the fourth episode, when Irving, whenever he, and with the cruel, I love the way, just to touch on that a little bit, because I just really really enjoyed the way that Irving figured it, put the pieces together, and with the cruelty, and now I was sharing about the bonds and the relationships with the people
mhm,
earlier with this episode. He realized the cruelty of Helena, as far as, and hats off. You were talking about acting as far as
mhm,
Dramel, with his facial, Britt Lower, whenever they were having the discussion about um the Night Gardener and stuff,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah,
and just the facial change, and I pointed at the screen, I was like, yes, 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 we were right. It was
yeah,
just nice to get that confirmation. But it was just we talk about facial acting a lot of times here on the podcast, and it was just nice to, it's just again, to my point, as I was giving the overall thoughts of this episode. It's just so many levels of acting, the production design, as far as like the colors, the tints, and just everything about it. It was just like a true masterclass in television.
right, right.
Yeah,
See, I didn't say like I didn't think we're right because I've already decided going into these two episodes that that's Helena.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I was more thinking to myself, man, you are the worst actor. You're really not selling this at all.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you are right. Britt Lauer does not get enough credit
yeah.
for her scenes and her performance because she out of everyone there are very distinctness but maybe that's not right because I still stand by what I said. I don't think they're distinct personalities. I
Mm,
really don't. I
I don't
really
think, yeah.
think it's more about that wantedness and
Hmm.
just the idea that that it's their majority, but because their experience is different
Hmm.
and the world that their worldview is different, those are the nuances that distinguish the innie from the outie.
Yep.
um and I think that's been more clarified as we continue on in this season specifically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad. I told you this yesterday. So glad we got to watch these 2 episodes back to back, because
Yep.
it's a perfect way to set us up for the reintegration arc.
Yep.
and
It is.
and if you think about it, not only is it Mark reintegrated, but in a way, Helly is like really being reintegrated, because this is her first day back to work.
Yep. Yep. It is.
So
He's like, yeah.
whatever
It's like
that
imagine,
means.
yeah, whatever that means. Waking up, freezing cold. Like, why? Why am I cold? Why am I wet? And why is Irving dead?
Well, but we don't even know what they see when.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot, because Irving's not. But anyway,
Yeah.
we are nearing the halfway point, and
Yeah.
we will get there as
Yeah.
the writers and directors continue to feed us answers to these questions. And on that note,
Indeed.
Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on all the socials at Will M Polk, WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me there too at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Scene and Nerd on Blue Sky. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at scene_n_nerd. And visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.